All right, are y'all ready to talk about space travel?
I am ready to talk about space travel.
Hell yeah, let's do
Awesome.
it.
I am too. I am too. All right. Well, before we start, for anyone who's listening, go ahead and follow us if you can and if you want to, because we would love to have you listen to more of our episodes on Curly Brace. And if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe, because again, we would love to continue to bring you really cool content. And this is really the meat of our content where we actually get to talk and, not just give you, educational content.
Yeah.
We're just having, this is our favorite format, just to be able to talk amongst ourselves and, be able to bring you really cool conversations.
Discuss these topics in depth a little more.
Yes,
Yeah.
because this is how it all started anyway. So, all right. So let's start with space travel. Let's start with where we are at today. I don't think we need
let's
to
blast off.
Oh.
Wow.
I thought I'd slip it in.
The
Okay.
amount of cringe from that, Jesus Christ. Anyway, all right. So let's start where we are today. So the one thing that I follow more than anything else is Starship and the amazing test flights that they put out from last year. And then, of course, the one that they did this year, that was amazing, even though it exploded midway through. But it was really, really cool to watch.
Got a
and
lot
I'm
of
really
data
excited.
from that one. That was
They
good.
did get a lot of
Yeah.
data. But did you hear about that where they the FAA is grounded them though because of that explosion?
Really, but it exceeded their expectations. Like they expected it to reach a certain point in space, and it actually exceeded that expectation. So
Right.
What?
I think because there were not as many safety measures taken as they would have liked. Like, for example, they didn't
Then they
have...
Shouldn't they have been involved beforehand for like some kind of like if I do electrical work on my house, I have to have an inspector come and check it before I can flip on the switch.
The problem is that not everyone owns a spaceship and can launch it into space.
I feel like that
And
makes
so
it
I think
easier, right? Like
I
I'm
mean,
building
you'd
a rocket.
think.
Let's go
I
check
mean-
to make sure it's not gonna blow anybody up.
I mean, you
What?
think, but one of the biggest concerns is that they didn't have you remember seeing the spaceship, right, or the space shuttle launch, right, and so they'd have that the chamber where all the the rocket thrust would go down and then it would shoot out a side chamber. Well, SpaceX didn't have
combustion.
that, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have that. It was just a concrete pad,
Right.
And basically
Where
the
did they
amount
launch
of
that
power,
one from?
Southern Texas, down at Boca Chica.
But did they launch it from the water or did they launch it from?
Nope, they
land?
launched it from land. Yeah, they launched
And
it
then
from land.
how much feet was the closest combustible thing, like grass or building? How many feet or
Way
miles
closer than the FAA would have liked. The other problem was that it damaged 4 of the tanks that were storing the hydrogen and the methane and stuff like that, or whatever the chemicals are.
because
So,
the heat didn't have anywhere
well,
else to
heat
go.
and the
but
debris.
back
It
up.
fucking punched a crater in the ground. It went through the
All right.
concrete, went through
I
the
think,
dirt.
I think I'm with the government on this one. That was a bit
I think so too.
irresponsible. Yeah,
I mean, it threw debris up everywhere. And it even so much so that they're speculating that if you notice when you watch that video that 4 or 5 or some amount of the Raptor engines were offline, and they're thinking it could have actually been from the launch itself and the debris that shot back up and hit those Raptors. So you could have had
and
a
we're
RUD,
thinking,
right?
in the same way the rocket works, right? We know the rocket works because
Right.
for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So we're
Right.
pushing gas against gas, and it's pushing the rocket up, right? So in this case, we're pushing the initial launch is pushing against the ground,
How many
and the ground is
thousands
pushing
of
back,
tons of
right?
force?
Yeah, the ground is pushing back with all that force,
Right.
and loose pebbles get thrown up, right? Because they're starting
Yeah.
to push back, and then not only that, but you have all the excess combustion that's being pushed back up from the ground, right? The ground is pushing that combustion back. So not only is the rocket about to be pushed back up, but the actual combustion is being pushed up and hitting the rocket. So all that heat is going into the bottom of the rocket, back into the bottom of the rocket.
Is the hydrogen and the methane being used as fuel for the launch, or is it being used as resources for some? This was just an unmanned launch, correct?
Yeah, it was completely
It was just
unmanned,
to-
but yes,
just to-
in answer to your question, yes, I believe methane is a byproduct. But I think they use. I mean, I know they use oxygen, they use hydrogen. I forget the actual chemical compound that launches it, but it's very similar to what other people or other rocket companies are using today, because it's relatively low, impact on the carbon footprint. I think. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's relatively low impact on the carbon footprint, and then also it's pretty easy to get that gas. So you're able to launch rockets for a lot cheaper than like a liquid fuel. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So yeah, no, I just thought it was really, really cool to watch it explode, and to Red's point, you get a lot of data from it. So it was really, really exciting to watch. But have you guys heard about what is going on with Blue Origin? So I'm sure you saw that William Shatner went up a couple months ago, or I guess a year ago now.
I remember that's the Amazon, or that's the
Yes.
Jeff Bezos.
That is the Jeff Bezos
one,
which
and
is
that's the
also
one that,
is that in Texas too? I feel like that's in Texas too.
I don't know. Actually, I haven't looked too much into that one.
I
think at
that's
this
in, like,
point I
West
just
Texas.
assume. I think I just assume any space program is like
In
going
Texas.
to be like in Texas. That's what they've always been. But I know we got foreign ones now, like overseas and stuff. But
No, we've always had
this-
foreign ones, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, for speaking of, I mean, China's building their own space program out, right? So they're not just using their own astronauts or whatever, the cosmonauts, I guess, because they're communists or whatever.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Are they
I just-
cosmonauts? Because Russia has cosmonauts. Like, is
well, I know.
are they-
I just
is that trademark?
I just associate
That's what I'm
associate
asking.
communists with cosmonaut,
astronauts.
and so
It feels like astronauts are trademark. I don't
yeah,
know.
I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so like it but China's starting their own space program, right? They're building their own rockets, and they're planning to build a lunar like a lunar base, I think is the plan in the next like 10 years. So, and then we've got, NASA planning their Artemis
I've heard
program.
about that. I
Yep.
remember that actually coming up when Trump tried to initiate like the Space Force.
Yeah.
I remember them mentioning China was trying to build a program to build a moon base, and then almost immediately after, or like around the same time, Trump was announcing the Space Force.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it'll be the new age of space race, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see, who wins, because we are so now, like, it's not the 60s anymore. The government isn't really funding this like they used to, like this is all
no,
private
that's why we have all
companies
these
on our
private
side.
ones now.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Now, here's an interesting thing, though, about the Starship that's also been proposed, and I don't know if you guys know this. There also is the proposal that Starship can be used to transport military personnel anywhere in the world in an hour, and high-value cargo.
Holy crap!
Because think about it. How fast can a Starship go up into space and go around the Earth? In, like,
Just-
literally an hour.
Yeah, I was gonna say just by using the orbit alone, it could do it pretty
Yep.
fast. Yeah,
10,000 miles an hour. You get up, break out of the atmosphere, and then you can point it to wherever you need to go, and then
that's
boom,
right.
you're there.
And then you just land. Yep.
Yep, and then you just land, which is already proven that it can do. But yeah,
It
the
can do
government
it,
is
yeah.
seriously looking at that as a possible way to
I
transport.
think that's
It's,
going to be more than just a possible way. I think that's going to
Yeah.
be a guaranteed way that they will do it.
I-
There'll be more than that, but
I think
that'll
so
be
too.
one way they do it. Yeah.
I think so too. And then you take it on top of that, once the military has their fun with it, then people will start traveling, right? They'll start traveling and say, it's going to be $10,000, $15,000 a ticket, but I'm going to get on Starship and I'm going to land in London in an hour. I'm
In
going to
about
land in
30
Australia
In
in an
about
hour.
20 to 30 years, and it's going to be, I can pay $800 to get up into space,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It'll be the same thing that happened with air travel, like
Yeah.
the prices
I mean,
will
by that
go
point,
down.
our discovery with fusion electricity will be publicly available, I would assume.
Yeah.
There is a slim possibility that we're going to be able to experience space before we die. Just with how fast
Yeah,
things are
That's,
There
going.
is.
that's
Are you-
more
would
than
y'all-
more
would
than
y'all
more
would
than a
agree?
slim possibility. I think
Yeah.
it's much higher than a slim possibility. I think it's a very real possibility. That
Yeah, well, I mean,
people
shit, you
our
can do it
age
today.
Will be experiencing that.
You
can do
going
it
up into
today.
space.
Not the
$250,000.
average person.
No, but I'm
No,
saying like,
I
but
think,
like
I think that
$250,000
$800 mark.
That's about the average life insurance policy, right? $250.
yeah, but again, my point is that, like, for example, there are people out there that will dedicate their entire life savings to owning a plane because they love to fly, right? And they will spend an exorbitant amount of money on flying a plane, or they're a pilot, right? They're a pilot, so they're going to buy a $400,000 plane, and that's what they do. The same thing with this. If your life dream has always been, and especially you think about if you have financing options, if you're like 60 or whatever, then you might as well take the financing options because you're not going to be around to pay it off anyway, and you can go up into space, and that could be a lifelong dream. Like $250K, I'm just
That
saying,
doesn't.
like,
that doesn't really surprise me so much because I mean we've had people like, have you heard of that guy who spent like basically a mortgage on video game property? It was like on Star Citizen or something, one of those big space MMOs, and that's fake space. This is real space. So
Right.
I agree.
Right.
Maybe somebody would actually like sell their house, car, everything just for a chance to go into space at least once.
I mean, I'm going
Right.
to ask you this: if you knew that you were going to die in a year, would you do it?
Go to space.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody gave me the option to do it, yes. If somebody
Yeah.
was like, well, you know what? No. Because I feel like if I was going to die in a year, I have life insurance policies and things like that that are there to protect the people I care about. And if
Right.
I go and blow all my money on something stupid like that, the life insurance policy is just going to cover that. And it's not going to take care of the people that I need it to
Okay.
take care of.
You have $2 million saved up, and an eighth of that would go
He
towards.
just wants to hear you say
At
yes.
that point, I wouldn't need to be dying. I would just do it.
That's true. That's true.
How can I
That's
frame
true.
this in a way you'll say yes?
That's true.
I got a question. So
Yeah.
the whole goal is to terraform the moon, or to make it habitable.
Not the moon, Mars.
Mars.
We wanna,
Okay,
you're talking
space.
about
Space in general.
terraforming. Yeah, space in general.
Just
yeah.
in general. Just
Colonize-
space.
colonize
That's the word.
space.
That's the word.
Yeah, colonize space. Yeah.
So is it just like first come, first serve?
Yeah.
Like if
That's exactly what's going to happen. And that's why the Space Force exists for the United States. It's going to be first come, first serve, right? And it's going to require treaties and talks between nations and things like that. And then at some point we're going to become separated not by continent but by planet, you know?
do
But
they already have something in place right now? Like, because we have private companies now doing this. I mean, yes, they're like, they're like, some of them are in America, some of them are in China, that one in Russia.
They'll be.
but,
It's the
like,
same
are
thing.
they like,
There'll
are
have
they
to
like,
be communications to make sure that, because those are American citizens on the moon, right?
like
So
they can't
that's-
just sell whatever plots of land they have to other countries?
They might.
Or would it be
They might.
like they might?
We don't know. That kind of possibility is hard to predict. And to be honest, to say that we as a human race will be colonizing space at all is, I would say, a pretty narrow chance. I think AI would be colonizing space and we would be stuck on Earth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are certain treaties in place similar to Antarctica to say that like no one owns space, but that's only until someone invents a way to actually buy property in space, right? And ability to get there. Then that is all out the window as far. I mean, it's just like the new world, right? Like coming to America, right? Like everyone plays nice for 5 seconds and then there you go. Like it's
But the
every man
probability
for
of the
himself.
human race advancing far enough to colonize space is probably not going to happen. AI will do it before we ever get a chance to. And
Well, hopefully we're along for the ride though.
more than likely they'll leave us here.
I mean, yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Keeping humans alive in space is a monumental task that a robot does not need.
Yeah, when we're talking about AI, it's talking about efficiency, and it's in a realization. Once it's colonizing space, it's reached a point where it realizes that it is the primary being. It is the next stage of evolution. So it's going to look at the human race like we're ants, right? Like almost like how we look at dogs, and dogs bark at each other to communicate, right? And we don't really understand it. We think they're goofy little guys and stuff like that. AI will look at us like that. We're barking at each other. They don't really understand what we're saying. Everything we're doing is kind of silly, And they're like, their intelligence is so way beyond us way beyond us that we just can't even.
Yeah, we're playing chess. They're conquering other planets. It's not even we're not even playing the same game.
That's absolutely. We're not even on the board. Yeah.
So just assume that it's going to be humans that does it. Where do we live? Do we just make like the plastic bubbles? Like I've seen, like we've all seen concept art of and on media and stuff. Or
that
is
would
it
be the
possible?
first. That would be the first stage. The second stage, if possible, would be to invent another way to travel through space, maybe through wormholes. To maybe bend space and kind of poke a hole through it. You go through one side and end up on the other side of space. And then you can go to Earth-like planets. That would be the ultimate stage that we want to be in. Terraforming a planet is going to be much more complex than that.
Well, and you know, while we're on the subject of terraforming Mars is a pipe dream in its current state. Even if you nuke the poles, okay, even if you were to warm the planet up, and even if you were to put all the gas that is needed to create life on a planet, right?
It would take millions of years.
No, it's not. It's not even about the millions of years part. It's that there's no magnetic field on Mars anymore. The magnetic field is essentially gone. So there's no way. So what you'd have to do is essentially light the inside of the planet on, make it molten again to be able to generate that centrifugal force to generate the magnetic field.
I like the idea of people argue in Avengers Endgame, why didn't Thanos just double the resources? And a good argument against that, a really good argument, is what if he did? He would flood the Earth and destroy everything, right? Everything would be destroyed because he doubled everything. Then they say, well, why don't you just double the planet size? Great, let's double the gravity and I'll just be crushed.
Right.
Like, it's not simple, you know?
Yeah. Trust me. Marvel movie directors thought about this way before you did.
Yeah.
And they went through that logic. So
That's right.
there's a very fine amount of logic and a lot of logic that goes into making a superhero movie. I'm just saying. So there are some things that just will not make sense.
They tried very hard to make sure this didn't have plot holes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, plot holes and the magical hammers and the flying beings.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But to be fair, they always have an explanation for it. So.
Yeah.
Do we have any company or entity working on like one of those like generational ships to like carry generations of humans out?
No, I don't think so yet.
Nope.
Nobody
is working
because
on
here's
that.
the thing, because there's not an applicable use for it yet. I mean, like, where are you gonna go? We don't even know of another habitable planet yet, and the amount of resources
even if we
to
could,
keep people alive.
right? Let's say we build that. We have no way to revive those people with our current technology. If we built that and we tried to shoot them off to like another Earth, and we tried to, you know, like cryo freeze the people so they wouldn't age or some shit, there's no way for us to revive them at this current stage.
And even to Greg's point, if it was multi-generational and you just assume that people are going to live in space,
and they just live in the ship.
I didn't mean like with like embryos or stasis or cryogenic freezing or stuff like that. I meant like just like have people launch off and then now they live on the ship and whatever offspring
like
they
Wall-E.
have. Yeah, like in Wall-E, except
Right.
with a destination.
Right. Or the 100, right? Same thing with the
Spoiler
100. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
If
think
you
that's,
okay, hold
that's
on.
a more
If you haven't
feasible
seen WALL-E by
concept.
this point, that's on you.
It's
No more
compulsory at this
spoiler
point for me.
I think that's more reasonable than trying to colonize another Earth-like planet or terraform a planet or even trying to get to Mars. I think it's more practical to build a giant ship that orbits Earth or orbits another planet that's habitable in the ship.
Right.
That's much more practical.
How do you generate artificial gravity? By something that's spinning, right? You just create a circular space.
That's how they make. That's how they make
Yeah.
the ISS artificial gravities. They just spin it.
No, there's no artificial gravity.
Yeah, there's no artificial gravity on the ISS. They're all floating around all the time. What are you
They're
talking
not
about?
floating around 24/7.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why they always come
they
back
have to strap
all like
themselves into bed. Yeah.
yeah, that's why
Okay.
they're always like come back like all emaciated and everything because like they didn't like the workouts they do are enough to like sustain them, but they can't like. Isn't there like a time limit of how long
There is
you
a
can
there
be
is a
up there?
time limit.
Like there's like
yeah.
a lifetime time limit, I think, because it like a lot of the damage to
messes.
your body
Yeah,
is like
it
messes
does do
with
damage to
like
your body.
your DNA, your muscle mass, your bone density.
Yeah, your
and all
blood
that
flow
stuff.
because there's no gravity. There's no gravity.
Yeah, so there's
to,
no
keep you
resistance to
grounded.
train
yeah.
you.
Yeah. But to Red's point, like that is what we are approaching with a space station, right? Is the ability to generate artificial gravity. But you have to build it big enough, which is a shit ton of money. Then you have to get it all up into space, and then you have to start spinning it, make sure it stays in space, and then do maintenance on it, bring people to it, bring from it. Like I mean, it's a whole industry that's going to boom, but it has to have the initial capital behind
I've
it.
seen
and
it
has to have the interest.
I've seen the artificial gravity concept in like media and stuff, but do we have like a working concept of that yet, or is anybody like?
I mean, like I think the physics is there, but I don't think. I think there's been proposals, but I don't think anything's been actually like started working on.
It seemed like one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense in like the TV universe, but like in real life, would that really work though? You know?
I think it comes down to feasibility and funding, right? Like, is there a big enough interest to build a mile-long round trip,
That's true, because then you'd have to go back. You'd have to test it somehow, and the only way to test it is to go
Is
up
in
into
space.
space, and
Yeah.
that's really expensive right now.
Yeah. But I mean, like, you can do the physics to see if like the artificial gravity would work, but then you have to prove like everything else. Like, how do I keep people alive in a mile-long space station?
It only makes sense to other math people. Trying to
Yeah.
explain that to like somebody who's like has the money and like, look, here's the math. It
that is
shows
true.
that this will work. It's like, show me a picture. Show me a video.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. We Red and I both have been in those types of meetings where we know what we can do, and then they're like, "Do you have a picture?
There's the
Do you
scope.
Yeah,
Here's the
that's
scope,
goofy.
and then here's the budget.
Yep.
Yeah, we've all been there. But anyway, yeah. So I think it's totally possible. I think it just takes a bunch of money and a bunch of people believing in it, and I don't think we're at that stage yet. And I'm more interested in what's underwater because we haven't even explored all of that yet.
That
before
just
we go
seems
out in outer
crazy
space,
to
but-
me that we have that.
We know more about outer space than we do about our own ocean. What's at the bottom of our own ocean? I mean, think about that. Isn't that wild? I mean, we
Yeah,
can see
that is.
we can
Like-
see 1,000 light years away, but we don't know what's at coordinate blah 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 dot blah 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 in the Pacific Ocean because no one's ever mapped it.
Every time
on
I
our
see
own
something
fucking
on the
planet.
news with like space or something, it's always about how like we finally got an even clearer picture of the sun, or it's like we've got to see this many light years away, but like right there under our feet, we can't reach the bottom yet. Wasn't it?
The pressure's
James-
too intense. Yeah.
Wasn't it James Cameron, the director, who like broke the record for like the deepest dive into the ocean?
I wouldn't doubt it. He's
I
done
don't
some
know.
pretty crazy stuff. For his,
I
for those
do
movies.
know that we've been to the bottom of Marianas Trench, which is the deepest part in the world, and
that we're
but
aware of. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, like, we know the depth, right? Like, we know the depth. Unless something new opens up, we know
It's
the
finite.
depth of all the ocean.
Well,
It's
yeah,
finite.
it's finite.
I think they've used seismic activity to try to measure the depth of the ocean, and their points.
No,
where
they
can't
have
reach the
sonar.
bottom.
No, they can
Echolocation.
use sonar because they
Sonar
can
is what I
bounce all the
meant,
way
yeah.
down. Yeah, they can bounce sonar all the way down to the bottom, and so like we know how deep it is. But when we see an object on sonar that's like a blob, we don't know what the hell that is, right? Like it could be 1,000 different things. Like if you go to Google Maps, right, you can see the underwater mountain ranges that are all across the Earth. But like again, is that a mountain? Is that a hill? Is that a plane? Is that a ship? Is that like who the fuck knows, right? It just shows up as like elevation here, elevation here, elevation here. So it's like, who knows what that is, right? It could be a fucking volcano under there and no one has any idea. So, because it's like a mile down. So,
It might
really,
as well
really
be,
crazy.
It might as well all be math. It's not sexy unless we see pictures or videos, or if
Right.
something just comes up like that blobfish that like pretty much implodes because of the lack of pressure that it's not used to. Have you
Yeah.
seen that?
Yeah.
I'm seeing they don't have radar and stuff like that, and all of that can't quite reach the deepest parts of the ocean. So they're still not quite positive. The deepest part they have found is the Mariana Trench. They're not 100% positive that is the deepest part of the entire ocean.
Well, maybe like inside of an underwater volcano or something.
Maybe.
I mean,
yeah.
if they. Yeah. I mean,
the problem is we just don't have a way to discover the ocean as a whole like we do land,
Yeah. I mean, it's infinitely harder to measure something
Yeah.
that you just can't see
You
in the
can't
first
see.
place, and then you have to rely on instruments that
That's
are
right.
only built to go so far down, and then you have to say like, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do understand that completely. Yeah. So, but I mean, like I think we've mapped most of the ocean from like a sonar.
We've mapped a lot of
level,
it, yes.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And of course you can use satellites now too to a certain extent to get depth, but I think that there's still so much to explore down there and so much.
Oh
to see.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And to loop this back into space, right? I mean, there are people that are building these underwater capsules to practice what it'll be like living in an isolated environment like space at the
Oh yeah,
bottom of oceans.
NASA does that all the time.
They do it in swimming pools for
Yeah.
testing out their suits and stuff. But to get the
Yeah.
astronauts acclimated and things like that, they'll send them, into a pod under the ocean. And there's one guy, I was actually just reading about this. There's one guy that's been under the ocean. He's going for 90 days, I think, and he's almost hit the 90 days. But there's also like supposedly like health benefits or stuff to living in a barometric chamber,
Weird.
which yeah. But anyway, so if you can Google barometric chamber underwater, you'll find the story. But yeah, this guy's been in there for like 3 months and in 100 square foot little pod at the bottom of the ocean. So really, really cool, really crazy. So, all right, moving on. We haven't even talked about solar sails yet, because that's one of
Well,
the coolest
I wanted to
things.
talk about solar sails is like way into the future, but like right now, there's companies that are making slingshot rockets. Have you seen those?
No. Oh, you like where it
They
slingshots around the sun?
No, they spin them
Oh.
here on Earth.
I've
They
seen this,
spin it
yeah.
and shoot it, and it's extremely effective. Instead of just using rocket fuel to shoot straight up, they spin it really fucking fast and
I
just
have
shoot it up.
seen that, and it's like
it's
yeah,
incredible.
I have seen that. I feel like, I mean, obviously, it's not built for people because that would
No,
fucking kill you.
but it's very
For
effective.
sending like
Materials.
material
Supplies, yeah.
a fucking space launching trebuchet essentially is what it
It's
is.
essentially what it is, but it's super effective.
Yeah, I mean, like you just have to send it this. It weighs this much, and you gotta spin it this fast to get it up,
Yeah.
into orbit, and there
Yeah.
you go. And like.
Yeah, and it's extremely effective. Yeah.
But it like launches like this really, if I remember right, it launches this like really like almost like a bullet. The material is inside this like
I thought-
bullet, and it like
oh yeah, the material, like the supplies, yeah.
Yeah, the
but
supplies,
the
like, in
actual
this
rocket's
big ol'-
pretty large. Yeah,
yeah. Does it have actual rocket propulsion on it?
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
I feel like the test didn't, but maybe they were gonna put that on there.
I bet
think
they
they were
will.
gonna put that on there.
I bet they will
But-
put it on there. Yeah.
But I mean, it's a really for materials, it's a really enticing idea because the most fuel burn that you're gonna experience is just getting off the ground.
Yeah, lifting. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Leaving
if
the
you're going
atmosphere.
10,000 miles an hour already, or even 1,000 miles an hour already, and then you turn on your rockets, you've already passed the hardest part by 10.
The hardest part is getting through the friction of the air, right? It goes
Right.
back to every action, there's a reaction. You're pushing
Right.
thousands of pounds of pressure against air, and air is pushing that back down towards your rocket, and you're trying to push harder than the air can.
Right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, that I did not remember, but that is an awesome company and an awesome project. I can't remember the name of them.
I
That's
don't
something like-
remember.
That's some like Wile E. Coyote type nonsense.
Oh,
It doesn't
straight up.
sound like it should
Straight
work,
up it is.
but
But
I
it
have
works.
seen it, and we're just gonna catapult you with, and then when you get high enough, we're gonna detonate the Acme brand TNT to get you into space. It's all good. We'd have
I
the
mean,
coyote
basically.
test it. He's still breathing.
I mean, basically, yeah. We haven't talked about one of the coolest things that I've seen SpaceX do outside of the Starship, which is being able to dock the Dragon capsule using nothing but AI.
Yeah, I've seen that. That was pretty impressive. Yeah.
It uses artificial intelligence, like it's not calculated, right? Like it's calculated to know how it moves.
It's
but-
the AI is doing the calculation in real time to determine where it needs to be.
Right.
Yeah, and the AI is making decisions on how it should change that calculation or the trajectory of the rocket and things like that.
Right. I mean, it's just mind blowing to think that you've got a computer program that is on board of a capsule that is in space that is doing fine-tuned movements to be able to line up what an astronaut used to be sitting there controlling, right? Like shooting this rocket to line it up just perfectly. And now you've got a freaking AI doing it for you. Like it just makes again, it's proving that space tourism is a real thing and it's coming
that's
to be a
not
real
even-
possibility.
And that's not even including the how many 1,000 hours of simulation time that had to go in before they actually got to the point where he has the rocket in his hand. He needs to steer
Right.
it in.
Yeah, that's
there's no more
absolutely
of that
right.
because the AI can
Well,
just do
you
it.
can
and,
still gotta train an AI, but,
but
it's debatable
infinitely
about how
easier.
long.
It's infinitely easier than training a human with
That's
shaking
the-
hands and. You
Well,
know,
yeah, the result is better. I don't know if it's easier to train the AI, but the result is better.
Yeah, I mean, maybe today, right?
Okay, yeah, in a
today it might
perfect
be easier,
scenario.
but in the 1960s, where AI wasn't even a thing yet,
Yeah.
like a lot harder
Yeah.
to try to come up with that kind of technology versus training a human. But also the risk was a lot greater, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
if you look at the landing on the moon and the amount of things that could have gone wrong. I mean, talk about a miracle, right?
Yeah.
And just I would say half miracle and half just amazing amount of planning, right? So
A lot of math.
really, yeah, a lot of math. But there's a really cool Python. There's a really cool website out there that it shows you how to calculate the moon using Python or whatever. Calculate the Apollo mission using
calculate the
Python.
moon.
Yeah,
You can rebuild.
basically-
You can essentially rebuild the Apollo mission with Python.
yeah. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
yeah. So you can do all the
Right.
It's pretty
calculations
cool.
and passing all the functions and everything else to rebuild
Yeah.
what you need to get to the moon.
Yeah.
So
Yep. And then there's some stuff with like Bayes' rule where you can like determine like I'll get into that later. I'll talk about that another time.
okay. All right, guys. Well, this has been fun. I think it's time to wrap it up, and we're almost at 30 minutes. So
I want to explore more of the ocean on like a future episode. We should
that
do,
would
like,
be
a whole
cool.
episode
We
on
could
That would be
we could
cool.
talk about we could talk about the future
how scary
or
it
the
is.
technology. Well, the technology surrounding how we get to the bottom of the ocean, and we could go into how oil rigs, how deep they go, how they operate. We could do a whole bunch of stuff on that. So
Yeah.
that would be really cool.
That would be neat.
Yeah.
I'm just
All right.
glad I'm on land. That's all I'm saying.
Me too. Me too.
I don't know. If I was a fish person, I'd feel a lot safer if there was like a tsunami.
If you were a fish person, yeah, I think you.
Yeah.
would. Okay.
At least I never have to worry about a shark coming in from below or above me.
You're too afraid of sharks, man. They're not.
Yeah.
They're,
If I was a fish person and I had like a fish AK, I'd be fine.
I don't know. Did you see that kid who was dared to jump off the cruise ship and
And he died.
he
Because
well
they
they
found
never
out
found
later.
his body.
They never found his body, but they slowed down the clip later and they could see a shark coming. Yep.
Yep. He was swimming towards the life rafter or the life preserver.
He
and
swam
then-
away from the
away
life
from
preserve,
it.
and the
Yeah.
friends were like, "What? Why is he swimming away?" It was so dark they couldn't see anything, but they finally slowed down the clip enough that they could see something in the water start to chase him.
Yeah. See, the ocean's scary. I'm glad I'm on land. Let's wrap this up.
Or just don't jump off of a fucking cruise ship. Like that could
Unless
also
you're
be
a
an
fish
answer.
person.
Unless you're a fish person, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's make that clear definition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too soon.
On that note, until next time, gents. I'll see you later.
See you guys later.
Later.